Hello, my name is Cristina Galvez and I will present my second language analysis project. The table of contents include 1. Introduction, 2. Description of the subject, 3. Analysis of the sample, and 4. Conclusions. Introduction: Psycholinguistics in the study of the second language acquisition process and objective of the study. Second language acquisition is the process through which a person learns a language other than the native one. Of course, once they have completed the process of acquiring their first language at an early age. The field that studies this process is also known as second language acquisition, although sometimes it is called foreign language acquisition if the process is carried in a context or place where the target language isn't spoken. There are numerous theories around second language acquisition and/or second language learning. Of course, we are talking about a complex process that includes different types of elements. For example, biological, psychological, social, cultural, and even political elements. Among the theories that study this phenomenon, behaviorism has been one of the most relevant. This approach gave rise to what is known as error analysis and to interlanguage studies, which contemplate the concept of interference. Interference is how errors made in the target language usually are the product of already established knowledge or competency in the first language. Eventually, interference derived in the concept of transfer, understanding this as the influence of the first language in the target language and not so much as a difficulty. Objective of the project: to analyze the development of English as a second language of a native Spanish speaker. Description of the subject. Our subject is a professional 40-year-old woman whose native language is Spanish. Apart from her mother tongue and her knowledge of English, she does not speak any other language at any level. She is currently taking English lessons for specific purposes or business English as part of her job training, and she has been in this program for about a year. During her adolescence, she studied the language both within the formal education system and in a private institute. In a private institute, she studied for 2 years. Although she hasn't, before studying this lesson of English for specific purposes as part of her training, she hadn't spoken English or practiced the language for about 20 years. Her approximate level of proficiency is B2, and the interview was carried through a Zoom meeting. We used an instrument, although it wasn't strictly followed. Analysis of the sample. During the interview, we can notice how the subject often hesitates and uses pet words very frequently. She tries to find appropriate words or expressions, which takes her a little time than it would to someone who has higher fluency. Therefore, we can say that there is a control processing, since she has not reached the stage in which her speech is automatic. We also notice some simplifications in different levels. For instance, she uses frequently a similar structure in her utterances. She often used the present simple rather than other verbal tenses. Additionally, she repeats words like a little, beautiful, and a lot in different moments of the interview when she could use perhaps different words, but she uses these more simple or common words. She also uses we can notice some overgeneralizations. This is the use of a form of or a word in a structure or a phrase that doesn't require it. For example, in syntax and morphology, we can notice overgeneralization in utterances like I'm like yes, I'm like this country. The auxiliary to be is used in a context that shouldn't be used. We can notice also overgeneralization in other parts of the sample. Also, we notice how the subject notice herself gaps between what she says and what she wants to say. For example, when she mentions that she lost the word. We notice this in other moments of the interview when she seems to seek for the correct expression, but she doesn't achieve to say what she really wants to or in the way she intends to. We also see some transference errors in different levels. For example, in phonetics, the pronunciation of the U is used in Spanish. She, instead of lucky or building, the subject pronounces lucky and building. Additionally, in syntax, we can notice transference in phrases like you can to go to little town or here in Mexico to the towns that are beautiful. In the first phrase, there's a similarity with the order of the words as it would be in Spanish. And in the second phrase, there is also a similarity to a structure in Spanish. For example, if she said, aquí en México a los pueblos que son hermosos o bellos. So we can say this could perfectly be a syntax transference. We also see some omissions. For instance, in syntax, she omits some articles or prepositions. For example, in these phrases, if you want to go to beach, I travel because my job is a beautiful country, is an Australian company. Conclusions. The features and mechanisms observed in the sample include self-corrections, the awareness of the subject regarding errors in her own speech, transferences in different levels, omissions, overgeneralizations, and simplifications. Also, we can say that although the subject has some knowledge of the language, her speech is not fluent. So we find a control processing rather than an automatic process, where the subject will speak more effortless. Also, we can see similarities with first language acquisition process. For example, children, when they are acquiring their first language, often also use overgeneralizations and find a way to construct utterances and correct expressions, and therefore they find a system to do it. Some theories, for example, the naturalist theory, poses that there are several similarities within these two processes of acquiring the first language or learning or acquiring a second language. We also see a development of the interlanguage as an inherent process within second language learning or acquisition driven by cognitive mechanisms. We see transfers from L1 to L2 that are part of this process and are observable in our sample. Finally, we see evidently errors that are natural in all stages. Each stage is key and unavoidable in the process of learning a second language, and errors are natural in each one of these stages. Even when a maximum stage in learning is reached and fossilization or learning stagnation occurs, there still can be errors in the speech. Therefore, we could say that to a lesser or greater extent, there is always a form of interlanguage present in all stages of the development of a second language. These are my references. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, or you can write to my email.